Today we're going to have a look at Chapter 5, and that involves the context. Now, if you think of context, it refers to circumstances or maybe the setting in which a learner is situated. So you can imagine this is actually general knowledge. So imagine the learner in your classroom and aspects that can influence their success at school, or the effectiveness of you as a teacher and teaching content to learners in your classroom. So things to look out for in Chapter 5. The approach is a bit different, and the reason for that is because it's so general knowledge. If we think of the context of a learner, it's important to know different concepts as well as acronyms in this chapter. So be aware of what does CAPS mean, what does LOLT refer to, SGB, NCS or the revised NCS. So you can also imagine we can ask you, okay, why was the NCS revised? Now, okay, it's a lot of acronyms, a lot of questions that I'm starting with off the bat already, but don't sweat. Just replay the acronyms again and look it up in your textbook. And there's a lot more acronyms. I've just mentioned a few, can't give you everything away, but you need to go through the acronyms and understand it, as well as be able to write it out or type it out. So first of all, we're going to have a look at context analysis. So you focus on the learner's needs. Okay, so what are their strengths, their competencies, maybe some of their weaknesses, and also incorporating that in the lesson plan. So basically you want to see how all the learners participate in the process, but also considering the contextual factors that may have an influence on the lesson itself. So you need to consider that while you're preparing. But think practically. Okay, so we're going to have a look at that in a few slides. Alright, so this is a very nice visual representation of the context and aspects of the context analysis that you need to consider. So I'm just going to go through a few of them, but you can even print this out and keep this by hand and just write in information if you're a visual learner. So first of all, if we look at learners, we can consider the uniqueness of each learner, even the language background, and we're going to focus a bit more on that a bit later on, for instance, an individual that's, or a learner that's strong in their first language in isiXhosa or Venda, but there's no schools that maybe only focus on that as a first language. So that makes the process a bit more challenging. Just to the left, if we think of community aspects, we need to consider maybe even the media. So what's on radio, on TV, or influencing the individual in your classroom. Then the environment, you can imagine that a more challenging environment will have a bigger influence on an individual. So I'm just thinking of a learner that was in one of my classes that were involved in gangs, and he stood up for the right thing, and one of the gang members threatened him, and that had a massive influence. He didn't sleep at night. He sort of ran to after school, ran home and to school. He was basically constantly stressing and having anxiety and fearing his life. So you can imagine that environmental aspect having an influence on his life as well. And then the classroom, just your basic atmosphere in the classroom. So that you can imagine your relationship that you are building, emotional connectedness with the learners in the classroom, that can also have an impact on the learning content or the curriculum, or even the size. So the bigger the classroom, the more challenges that you may have. Alright, so this is just a general, very quick look at contextual analysis and the influences of the context on the learner.